as the world moves to net zero, including changes to help attract more investment in renewable energy and increase competition.
G'day everyone, welcome back to another video. Now the budget is out. The budget has been released. I'm going to give my thoughts on it. We watched it on a live stream last night, but let's go through everything that's changed and what Jimmy has planned for Australia's taxpayer money. Now, we've got them here. Albo's shirt was too tight all night. You know, it's choking him. He refuses to buy a bigger shirt for his neck, so he's choking. And then you've got Tony Burker over here, you know, daydreaming, fantasizing about the Lakemba prayers at night.
In my electorate, the streets come alive, particularly in Lakemba after dusk, when these evening prayers are completed.
Typical. But you knew this budget was going to be bad when the first 10 minutes, all Jimmy did was blame the war overseas on all Australia's inflation, all Australia's problems. All he wanted to do was talk about the war overseas.
War in the Middle East has been pushing up prices. We didn't decide when this war began, and we have no control over when it will properly end. The conflict in the Middle East and closure of the Strait of Hormuz has disrupted the global economy.
So straight from the get-go, you knew the Labor government was going to take no responsibility getting us up to $1 trillion in debt. They're going to blame overseas. But guess what? Inflation was running rampant before the war overseas. So blaming that overseas and not having oil was just a complete cop-out, and that's all they fell back on. It's the war overseas fault, not the government spending, the overspending of the Labor government. But then, after complaining for 10 minutes about the war overseas and why everything's getting expensive because we have no oil, did he say there's going to be tax cuts to get refineries going, to get drilling for oil, to get exports, to get us some money? No. After complaining for 10 minutes about not having oil and that's why everything's more expensive.
Getting through the global oil shock, oil production fell by 8 million barrels a day in the first month of the war. The global oil price started the year around $60 and has now been above $100 for the bulk of the past 2 months. This budget is about getting us through the global oil shock. We are responding to the biggest oil shock in history.
He went into how they're going to go for more net zero, how they want net zero, green energy, and how they want EVs.
We're progressing the most significant reforms to the national electricity market since the 1990s as the world moves to net zero, including changes to help attract more investment in renewable energy and increase competition.
So you can see the Labor government is completely delusional. They're still going on about the net zero, green energy, which has completely collapsed our country. And this is after speaking for 10 minutes about how having no oil has crippled our country. Instead of saying we're going to drill for oil and use that, they're going on about how we need to do more into net zero, more tax cuts to get net zero, green energy and EVs. Like, these people are delusional and they should not be running the country. This is why we are failing, because we cannot afford power and we do not have cheap oil because we don't want to use our resources. And you want to go into this net zero scheme, use all our taxpayer money and screw over Australians. And that's what they're continuing to do. So just on this budget, that should tell you already that this is a complete flop. They're putting all the money into net zero, EVs, all this rubbish that has been crippling our country. So it looks like we're not going to be exporting, we're not going to be drilling for oil, we're not going to be manufacturing again because Jimmy just wants to focus on, and the Labor government, Albo, Tony Burke, wants to focus on net zero more than actually helping Australians. It's absolutely sick. But then negative gearing come up after they ran that campaign swearing they're not going to change negative gearing. Swearing by it, actually getting angry at reporters even asking about it, how crazy it would be they're not going to change negative gearing.
Can you rule out any changes to negative gearing and capital gains tax?
Yes. How hard is it for the 50th time? I told people we wouldn't make changes. The proof's in the pudding, Andrew.
And guess what? They changed it. Of course they did. So now you can only get negative gearing on a new house build, not an old house.
We'll limit negative gearing for residential property to new builds from July next year.
So, you know, I think it's all because they want mass immigration. They want to force investors to build new houses because they're bringing too many people in. They want to force people out of having a second property, say they inherited a property from their parents. They don't want you owning it. They don't want all that stuff. They don't want you investing in another property because they got that mass immigration, which they did not address in this whole thing. They did not address mass immigration. They didn't address Bondi and how they're going to put more money into checking what everyone's doing online, but they didn't name radical Islam. Of course not. They can't say that. That's crazy. They just said how we're going to do more speech laws online, all that rubbish. That's painful enough. But then, after backstabbing everyone on negative gearing, which they said they wouldn't do, they went into domestic abuse and how they need to spend billions on, equality and equal pay in domestic abuse. I don't know what country you're living in, but we've had equal pay in Australia probably before I was born. So I don't understand I've never worked in a workplace where if you're a man or a woman, you get paid different. That doesn't exist in Australia. So why are we spending hundreds of millions and billions of dollars into that? It makes no sense.
Speaker, the gender pay gap has never been narrower, and women's workforce participation hit record highs last year. We're proud to have backed $21 billion in wage rises for women working in sectors like aged care and early childhood education, which have been undervalued for too long.
So, it's crazy. I'm very disappointed in the budget. I wasn't surprised that they backstabbed on everything they said. I was shocked that they spoke for 10 minutes about a war overseas and blamed that, saying we have no oil, and then saying instead of we're going to invest in oil and our resources, we're going to continue to invest in net zero and green energy. That was the nail in the coffin. That's the end of the Labor government. That shows you they will not change, because all they care about is that net zero, green energy, optics. Not to mention, how sad was this? This was the big saving you're going to get weekly by 2028.
Averaged out over the year, our 3 tax cuts, our instant deduction and the new offset are the equivalent of up to $54 back in the average earner's pocket each week.
So you're telling me I have to wait a few more years to save $54 a week while inflation just in the grocery store has gone up so much that $54 doesn't even fill up half a grocery bag, and you think that's an achievement? By 2028, you'll save $54. And the negative gearing thing was just a backstab because they promised they wouldn't do it. That's it. They did not address mass immigration. When they addressed Bondi, they just said we need more speech laws, more gun laws. That's a big one as well. They said we need to restrict guns, not the people that are radicals in our country. I mean, what do you expect? They wanted the ISIS brides back here, in my opinion. So why would they want to restrict these people? They just want to take more rights away from law-abiding Australians. But anyway, let me know what you thought of the budget in the comments down below. Give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, join to be a member if you want to see these videos early. It means a lot to me, and the support is how I can do this. So thank you all for being here. Let's keep speaking up for Australia and calling out this net zero, this woke ideology they're putting all our taxpayer money in. They still did not address the real issues. They backstabbed on negative gearing. They blame the war overseas instead of our rapid government spending for inflation. It's absolutely sick. They took no accountability for their failure of budgeting. Jimmy lost his calculator. They didn't want to admit it. And now look what we're in. And they still think the war overseas is to blame for everything after the years of the failing Labor government.
We're progressing the most significant reforms to the national electricity market since the 1990s as the world moves to net zero, including changes to help attract more investment in renewable energy and increase competition.